Hi everyone, welcome. In today's video, we are going to build this basic but stunning website. It has three main sections. We have the header, which contains the navbar, and in it we have this logo. We have this list items over here. We also have a search bar where you can search anything, and when I search, it refreshes the page. We also have this text over here describing what the website is about. We also have these buttons here with some hover effects, so you can see the hover effects from them. We also have a registration page where you can sign up, enter your details and sign up. And if you have an account, then we have an option here for you to log in. So we are going to build this basic but very beautiful website using HTML and CSS in a few minutes. So grab your tools because we're starting right now. So here in my code editor, and I'm using Visual Studio Code for these tutorials, but you can use any code editor of your choice. I have one index.html and style.css file. I also have an images folder with some images that I'll be using in this video. So I head over to the index.html file to create the basic HTML banner page. So type exclamation and hit tab. You can leave the title as document or whatever you want to call it. You can change it to anything, but I'll make it descriptive of. So I'll call it website. And after this title, we want to link the HTML to the CSS. So type link and set the href to the style.css file. So after this, in the body tag, I'll create a div and give it a class container. And now let's style this container div in the CSS. So here I want to select the entire document and give some default styling. To set margin 0, padding 0, box size into border box. So now let's start the container. Select it with the dot notation. I will give it a width 100%. Give it a height 100 VH. We set a background image to a linear gradient. We give it this RGBA color code with a comma, the same thing, and with a comma, the same thing. And in the second one, we change the alpha value to 0.2. And after this gradient color, we want to link an image. So with a comma, we type URL and set the image file path. So this will set background repeat to no repeat, background size to cover, background position to center, background attachment to fixed. Be sure to make this one 0.3 and 0.2 instead of 0.3. So now run this code with a VS Code Live Server extension, which I recommend you have. We have this fresh web page with a background image and some color overlay on it. So now let's continue with the HTML. Now in the container div, we want to create another div and give it a class navbar. In this navbar div, we'll create an IMG, set the src to the logo icon. And after this image, we'll create a UL. In the UL, we'll create an LI. In the LI, we'll create an anchor tag. And set the href to a hashtag. And set the text to home. So now let's copy this LI and paste 3 more times for about, contact, and social. And after this, after the UL, let's create a form. You can remove the action. And inside the form, I want to create an input tag. Video. And set a placeholder to enter keyword. And after the input, we'll create a button with a type submit. And the text is search. The type is submit. And when we save this, you can see that we have this on the web page, but you hardly will see anything. So let's style this in the CSS. So now let's style the navbar. So we'll select the navbar. We give it a width 100%. We give it padding 0 for top and bottom, and 50 pixels left and right. We set display to flex, align items to center, justify content to space between. But for now, let's give it some background color so that we can see what is going on. Even though we don't need the background color bar, so that we can see what is on the page. So now when we save this, you can see what we have. We have the logo here, we also have the list items here, and everything is arranged, the search bar over here, and everything is arranged the way we want. So now let's style the icon and also the rest of the items on the page. So now let's style the icon. We'll select navbar, IMG. Give it a width 80 pixels. Now you can see we are getting somewhere. So now let's style the UL. So navbar UL. Give it a width 50%. We set the display to flex, align item center, justify content space between, and some padding. So now let's style the LI inside the UL. We set the display block and change the font size. So now let's style the A tag inside the LI. Text decoration is none. Now when we run this, you can see we are getting somewhere now. So let's start the search bar. So let's select the search bar. It's navbar and form. And give it a relative position. So now let's start the input inside the form. We give it a width of 250 pixels. So we give it some width and height. We also change the font size, remove the border and all outlines, and change the font style to this oblige. So now let's start the button inside the form. So navbar form button. Now we increase the font size to 1.1 rem. So we set position absolute and set it to right 0 pixel. We also remove the outline and the border, give it some background color, and give it some height. So when we save this, you can see everything looks okay now. So we can remove the background color for the UL. Now everything looks okay. So now we're basically done with the header section. So let's move to the body. So over here in the HTML, after the closing navbar div, we want to create a div and give it a class form wrapper. In this form wrapper div, we'll create a form. And in this form, we'll create an H3 header and set the text to sign up. After the H3 header, we'll create an input. The type is text. We can remove the ID and the name. And set a placeholder to enter first name. We'll copy this input and paste. Change the placeholder to enter last name. After this, we'll paste it again and change the type to email and the placeholder to enter email. After this, we'll paste it again for password and change the type to password and the placeholder to enter password. And finally, we'll paste it for date. Be sure to close it. And over here, we'll remove the placeholder. We don't need the placeholder. And we'll change the type to date. And after the date input, let's create a div. And in this div, we'll create an A tag. Set the href to a hashtag. and set the text to already have account. And after the closing a tag, we'll create a span with the class login btn and set the text to login. And after this div, we'll create a submit button. So create a button with the class submit btn. Set the text to submit, and type should be submit. And when I save this, you see we have some text in the dark there and a bunch of input fields. So let's start this in the CSS. Now let's start the form wrapper. So select it. Give it a width of 334 pixels. Now we set border top left radius to 50%. And now we set border bottom right radius to 50% as well. We set position absolute. So we set the position absolute, give it margin right 50 pixels, margin top 150 pixels, and change the background color. And we give it some box shadow. So now you can see we have this form wrapper over here. So now let's start the H3 inside the form. So select the form wrapper, form, and H3. We increase the font size to 2 RAM. We give it some color. We change the font weight. We set the text align center, text decoration to underline. So now let's start the input in the form. We set display block. We give it some margin. We give it some height and width. Set the background to a transparent one. Give the color a white appearance. We remove all the border and outline, but we give it a border bottom of 1 pixel solid and the color is white. We give it some border bottom left radius 5 pixels and the same as the border bottom right radius 5 pixels. So now let's start the placeholder in the input field. So we select the form wrapper, column placeholder. We give it a color of white. And now you can see the things are looking very nice. So now let's start the A tag, the span, and also the submit button. So now let's start the div that contains the A tag and the span. Select form wrapper. So now let's start the A tag inside the div. We give it a white color. And margin 10 pixels. So now let's style the span inside the div, the login btn. It's a class, so we select with the dot. We set display inline block. We give it some padding, 3 pixels top and bottom and 10 pixels left and right. We give it some background color, change the color to white, increase the font size 1.1 rem. We remove the border and the outline. We give it some border radius and set cursor to pointer. So now let's start the submit button. We set width to 70%, display block, give it some padding, remove the border, the outline, and we also give it some background color of orange, increase the font size to 1.5 rem, give it a font width of 600, change the color to white, some border radius, and set cursor to pointer. So let's save this and see what we have. We have this, and the text is looking well, the login BTN, but it seems there's something wrong with the submit BTN. So over here, we'll spell the submit BTN correctly, submit. Now you see everything is looking all right. But I think if we increase the width of the input field, it will look a little better. Let's try that and see. So over here, let's check the input field. Let's increase it to 250 pixels instead of 200 and see if it looks worse. Now it kind of looks better. So now let's check the site for the text where we have the text here. So over here in the HTML, after the closing form wrapper div, we'll create another div and give it a class display. In this display div, we'll create an h1 and the text is artificial intelligence. And then we'll break. And after the break, we'll create a span. Inside of it, we write machine learning. After this h1, we'll create another h3 header and set the text to course description. Since my English teacher has traveled. And after this h3, we'll create a paragraph tag and we'll generate some lorem 20 words. So now let's start this in the CSS. So let's start the display div. We set the width to 60%. We give it some padding, top and down, 80 pixels, and left and right, 50 pixels. Set text align to left. So now let's start the h1 in the display. We change the color to white, increase the font size to 2.5 rem, set some margin for it. We increase the font weight and also the letter spacing to 2 pixels and set the font family to Ubuntu Mono and sans serif. So now let's start the span inside the h1. We set the color to this RGB color. We set the font family to Corel New and increase the font weight to 900. So now you see this is looking alright. So let's start the description and also the paragraph text. So now let's start the h3. Set the width to 50%. Background color, this RGB color code. And set color to orange. We increase the font size to 2 rem. We give it some font weight. We give it some margin at the bottom and letter spacing 2 pixels. So now let's start the paragraph text. We increase the font size 1.1 rem. We give it a white color, letter spacing to 1 pixels. We give it some font weight, font family to serif, and line height 30 pixels so that we can have some space between the lines. Now everything is looking alright. So let's create the buttons. So over here in the HTML, after the closing paragraph tag, we'll create a div and give it a class button container. And in this container, we'll create a button and give it a class regbtn. Set the text to register. We'll create another button and give it a class info.btn. And the text is more info. Now you see we have these two buttons over here. So let's style it in the CSS. So let's select the button container. We'll give it a margin top 40 pixels. Now let's start the buttons inside the button container. We'll give it some padding, 8 pixels top and bottom, left and right 20 pixels. We give it margin right 80 pixels, set the border radius to 30 pixels. Remove the background color, give it a white color, remove the outline, give it some border, and also set cursor to pointer. We also increase the font size 1.1 rem. So now you can see we have these two buttons here, but there are no hover effects on them. So let's add the hover effect so that when we hover over it, the background color will change. So let's first select the registration button. It's a class, so we select with the dot reg btn. Colon hover. So when we hover over it, we want to change the background color to gray. And also the info btn. Colon hover. When we hover, we want to change the background color to brown. Now you can see that when I hover over the button, the background color changes. But I want this to delay 0.5 seconds, so let's set a transition. Now in the button, we'll set some transition. Transition 0.5 seconds. It will ease in, out. So you see, when I hover over the buttons, it takes 0.5 seconds for the background color to change. And this is exactly what we want. So folks, this is basically how we've come to the conclusion of this video. How we built this basic but stunning website using HTML and CSS. If you find any value in this video, please be sure to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel for more tutorials like this one. If you have any questions, please feel free to leave it in the comment section below. As always, thanks for watching. We'll see you in the next one.